says connecting, and here we are. We're in 1 Samuel chapter 5 and 6 tonight. And if you would have been here last week, which you guys were, we were in chapters 3 and 4, and it appeared, at least to the Israelites and the Philistines, that God was now being held hostage by Israel's enemies. Israel had been defeated. They lost 4,000. They lost 30,000 in the battles with the Philistines. They had taken the ark in on their second battle. That's when they lost 30,000. They not only lost that many lives, but they lost the ark. And so the enemy now has that. And of course, not only did they lose all those lives, Hophni and Phinehas, which were the sons of Eli, were killed in that. Eli learns about it, and he falls from his seat, breaks his neck, and he dies. And then his daughter-in-law, who was pregnant, she gave birth to a son named Ichabod, which means gone in the glory. Gone is the glory. And she died. So from that standpoint, it looked like a big loss.
She died?
Yeah. Right. So it was Phinehas and Hophni and Eli, and then his daughter-in-law. So that was quite a time that happened there. It looked like a terrible, terrible loss. And they got the ark. Now, you might look at the title that I have tonight, and you'll notice it looks like it's spelled wrong. But I think you get the idea, right? It says Arkeological Discoveries. We will not spell archaeological, A-R-K, unless we have to be talking about this tonight as far as the ark is concerned. So I'll tell you what, quite a discovery that will be made throughout this text. It's fascinating from a literary point of view here. This account here is amazing. It has a lot of theological truths here, and beyond there's almost a lot of humor here. Actually, I would say there is humor, and especially God is laughing at them. But there are practical lessons that we can take from this section. So we're doing a pretty good chunk here, but it's all a literary flow, I would say. And so why don't we get started with a word from the Lord. Father, we thank you for your truth that you give us as we have studied through the time of Judges, Ruth, and now here we are in Samuel, Lord. We know that this was the time when the people had totally lost the very thought of who you really were and what you were about. But yet, you have your remnant, your truth marches on, and it's time to raise up a great prophet, Samuel. But in the meantime, you have some lessons to teach, and you're getting the people ready for a king to come. Ultimately, that king is Christ. And Lord, as we look at this tonight, may we learn better who you are and how you respond to disobedience. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, Philistines have the ark. First 5 verses. It's dealing with Dagon. He's one of their gods. He's the fish god. Philistines live right along the coast. And why wouldn't they have a fish god, right? Much of their living is made off of fish from the sea. So, now the Philistines took the ark of God, brought it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then the Philistines took the ark of God and brought it to the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. When the Ashdodites rose early in the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and set him in his place again. But when they arose early in the next morning, behold, Dagon had fallen on his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head of Dagon and both the palms of his hands were cut off on the threshold. Only the trunk of Dagon was left to him. Therefore, neither the priest or Dagon, nor all who enter Dagon's house, tread on the threshold of Dagon in Ashdod to this day. The ark is captured, provokes God. And, from merely a human point of view, it's like God is losing. We know better, don't we? God's total control. The Israelites, from their perspective, they're wondering what happened. We lost our people. We've lost our ark, which is some kind of a magical type box. It was supposed to give them victory. God's got quite a lesson for them. And so God is not an idol, and he doesn't need for men to carry him about all the land and carry it around Israel just to be able to be successful. That's not what the ark is about.
It's not voodoo.
Yeah, right. That's what they were kind of practicing there, wasn't there? But anyway, it's interesting. They take the ark to their own temple where Dagon is at and set the ark in a way that is probably lower than what Dagon is. They've got quite a find here, but their God is bigger than the Israelites' God as far as they're concerned, but they put it in there. They've heard the stories. And what happens is, must have been an accident the first night. Falls over, right? Prostrate it right on into the dirt. And so there is the ark in a subordinate position, and yet their God is laying in the dirt on the ground. So there we have it. The Philistines suppose, well, you know what? I don't know what it was. They must have come up with all sorts of excuses and explanations of why that happened. Maybe an earthquake. What it could have been the way that it was positioned somehow. Somebody had maybe touched it in a way that made it fall through the night somehow. So they securely anchored it this time. I'm sure that they made sure that it was there and it was steady. No doubt about it. No more falling on its face. And the next turns into a stump. I love this. You gotta love this. This is God's humor. He says, first time he just has it fall on its face. The next time it falls on its face, but hands are gone. The head is gone. And there it is. This is their God. And so you ever heard the insurance companies call an act of God? When the weather happens and such. This was an act of God. God was acting here. He's the one doing it, no doubt about it. Fallen before God, the ark, once again. Head broken off. Take it to the repairman. Gonna have to repair God. He's not perfect.
Gotta put your God back together.
The hands of their God. The head in the dirt, the ark of God, may be in the Philistine hands, at least they think, but the God of the Philistines is in the hands of the only true God, the God of Israel. And would you say that Dagon is in the hands of an angry God?
He's in the hands of the creator of God. Yeah.
Well, it's not so much prostration of Dagon, but the response of the Philistines here that's really amazing. The priest. It was the second symbolic scene that happened. The Ark of God is not an idol. The Ark of God is not Israel's God. The Ark is not, right? It's a symbol of God's presence. It's really all that is. Dagon is an idol. They fashioned him to be their God. They created their God, and that's really what an idol is. It's whenever you create your own gods, whether they be of material matter or just imaginations. But their God has been broken on impact. It requires repair, back to the shop. What should this tell the Philistines?
There's a problem.
Does a real God have to be picked off of the ground and to get repaired? Are we going to have to glue this thing back together?
I gotta tell a story about that. The family had these concrete images in front of their house, blue, and I had pointed it out several times to them, but that's not a god. Then they roses to it, candles, that stuff. It was outside.
Like a Buddha thing.
Like a Catholic thing.
And I had pointed it, and I let them know that I took offense to them putting that out there because we're drop it. And that's all I ever said. Anyway, shortly after, every time we had a family reunion, it was getting knocked over. There were pieces kept going back together. They eventually came to me and said that I was doing that. And I had no part of it. It just always reminded me a little bit of this story. You're about like this.
Carolyn, did you do
That's the
this?
same. That's
And
the
they
same
were
way
gluing it. They were gluing it back together, repainting it and all that, and whack.
Dad never believed in all that stuff, but Mom got hung up on the Mary thing. Dad inadvertently always somehow broke her statue.
See, that's what they said I always said, because every time they'd go over there, we'd have a family reunion, they'd find a chunk clopped off of it. I had nothing to do with it. I just thought that was, it always reminded me a little bit of the story here. It's like truth or, yeah, anyway. Now my mom goes, she was like, are you doing this? I said, I'm like, no. I'm smiling about it. And yeah, anyway, this was, sorry.
Perfect time to read
It was just interesting. I just
perfect
like,
time to read them this verse.
yeah, well, I just sat there and said, so is that what your God is? We have concrete.
Yeah.
What happens when you run out of glue?
Yeah, well, eventually they had to go get a new one, and they concreted that down or something. That's like, anyway, just never forgot that one.
These priests, do they humble themselves? No. Do they confess their sin? They don't give up worshiping a piece of wood
I
and
think it was wood or
stone and
stone
what
or
have you,
whatever.
whatever they had.
Whatever lasts the longest.
They didn't learn. Philistines didn't learn. So we move to the second part, 6 through 12. Amazing part here. Now the hand of the Lord was heavy on the Ashdodites. He ravaged them, smote them with tumors, both Ashdod and its territories. When the men of Ashdod saw that it was so, they said, the ark of the God of Israel must not remain with us, for his hand is severe on us and on Dagon our God, I guess. So they sent and gathered all the lords of the Philistines to them and said, what shall we do with the ark of the God of Israel? And they said, let the ark of the God of Israel be brought around to Gath. There are like 5 major cities in the Philistine area there. This is another one. They brought the ark of the God of Israel around. After they had brought it around, the hand of the Lord was against the city with a very great confusion, and he smote the men of the city, both young and old, so that tumors broke out on them. So they sent the ark of God to Ekron. And the ark of God came to Ekron. The Ekronites cried out, no way, get that thing out of here. It's not coming into the city limits, get it out. They have brought the ark of the God of Israel around to us to kill us and our people. They sent therefore and gathered all the lords of the Philistines and said, send away the ark of the God of Israel and let it return to its own place so that it will not kill us and our people. For there was a deadly confusion throughout the city. The hand of God was very heavy there. And the men who did not die were smitten with tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven. Okay, you've got tumors. What are tumors? Well, it's something serious. Could be boils.
I think it'd be like a cancer.
It has been said by a lot of commentaries. It's hemorrhoids. I don't know. I can tell you, hemorrhoids are bad enough to do something to like players like George Brett to keep them out of the World Series back in the 80s. If you might have remembered that. He was the greatest player the Royals ever had. And he couldn't play in the World Series because of the hemorrhoids. If you ever had that problem. Phil's probably back there. What's
yeah,
that?
I'm like, I don't really want to ask, but I'm curious.
We're better off not knowing. You will know. You will know someday. Maybe when you get older. I'm not saying it's going to happen to everybody, but it's some kind of a tumor, some kind of a boil, whatever it is. It's not
Pleasant.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. But there's something worse than this. What's happening?
Sounds like it's
People
enough
are
to kill
dying.
me. Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like it's whatever it is, it's hard enough that it's killing me.
That's exactly right. It's much more serious than just a few little hemorrhoid things going on. They're dying like flies. So there's been it's like almost like a manifestation here of bubonic plague. You got tumors and you got rats here, that they must have in that country because they made gold rats, and many deaths associated with rodents. So could have been something like a plague. It's killing people. You can imagine what was happening all through that country. And I'm sure they were thinking about having shutdowns,
Yeah.
wearing masks and
Yeah, their whole shutdown is get rid of it.
Yeah.
get it out of here.
At least it's been the force, right?
And so they take it from one city to another. And so you have this idea of the tumors. You've got Ashdod.
They called all the Philistines together. How did they even decide to take it to what next town? I would have thought that
Whoever didn't
if the
show
leaders
up.
from that town, well, it might have been the leaders that didn't show up.
The healthy ones took it back.
The rival cities.
Yeah.
I think of New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox. They hate each other. The New Yorkers say, take it up to Boston.
Here's a gift.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was all the hand of God. That's the idea. And the plague here, Philistine leaders know they're suffering because it is the presence of the ark. They do know this. They're not that stupid. They know exactly what it is. So they want to get rid of the ark. And they send the ark of God to Gath. And, of course, same thing happens to them. So they get rid of it. And so actually you have this whole, there's Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gath, Ashdod, that whole area. And all these cities are really pretty close. And they're right near the coast, and that's what Philistia is. But we know the plague follows the ark. And I know those other cities are mentioned later, like in chapter 6. These are the golden tumors in 17, which the Philistines returned for a guilt offering to the Lord, one for Ashdod, one for Gaza, one for Ashkelon, one for Gath, one for Ekron. So there was so each of those 5 of the, you have the golden mice and you have the golden tumors, however that looked. Can you imagine what a tumor still? We're giving our best to God.
Penny's laughing. She's got an image in her head that's probably not proper.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to figure out
What that looked like.
we cut it off and
These
here's
guys really know how to impress God.
Oh, God's going like this.
Like,
And
what?
they're going to offer this to me.
Like, at least they're trying.
Get it up.
But with what?
This is called appeasement.
Hey,
That's how they worship their gods. They appease their gods.
you know,
That was.
these guys never had the true knowledge of God to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
From the
So,
very beginning.
What you plague us with is we're gonna dip it in gold and give it back.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
kind
like,
of
they don't know any better. I mean, they could have submitted to the Israelites,
yeah,
at
that
some
might have
point,
been the better part.
but the
of it.
Israelites were disobedient
Yeah.
anyway. So when they saw the Israelites, they were like, yeah,
They should have just did this, Abel. We give up whatever you want.
Yeah, they
That's
should have.
really what they should have just did and all this other silliness.
And we see the Philistines have been ruling the area, right? I mean, they're on top of this thing. They're in Canaan. I mean, they're the biggies. Israel had slid into nothing, right? And this is God's way, though. And he lets the Philistines go ahead and blow away over 30,000. And yet at the same time, he's getting to raise up. And Samuel is already known. But you don't see Samuel in this part of the story. Nothing's here. But it is during the time of the judges. People are doing what is right in their own eyes. And of course, they offer their offering, and that's what they think. That's all they know. You know, that's what they did with their gods. They appeased their gods. And it's kind of interesting, though, you know, you have Ekron, and they go, oh, no, we're not gullible. You're not going to do a Madison Avenue sales job on us. You know, you get that out of here. You know, they totally refuse it. So they come up with a plan. And, of course, they're saying that we've got to send this thing back to Israel. This is God's judgment. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure I know how to ask this quite, but I was thinking earlier, they have Dagon, their fish god. And then they put the ark in there with Dagon. And they call it the God of Israel. I guess it was just the way then. Like, if there's a God of Israel, then never shall it be the God of the Philistines.
Right.
Simply because they're not Israel. Is that right? I mean, the Philistines couldn't have bowed down and said, okay, you're our God now.
Right.
We will worship you.
Right. That's what
They
Dagon was still
wouldn't have-
bigger there, you know.
They wouldn't have done that just because it just wasn't done.
It's
I
kind
guess.
of like,
I think they thought that they would gain the same power, because then it was another voodoo thing. It was another thing you rubbed, and it was going to give you magic powers. You know, it was like
Another
idols.
God.
Yeah, that's
Two
what I
gods
think.
are better than
That's how
one.
they viewed the Ark of the Covenant. You know, they didn't view, like I said, the total creator God, but they learned real quick that it didn't need their worship or their appeasements to it. So I think they thought if you own the more gods you own, you made the other guy doesn't have any gods, and you got all the power. I think that's how they seen that Ark of the Covenant thing, because they're idol worshippers.
Somewhere I read that, and maybe it's an archaeologist articles that I saw somewhere, that a lot of these gods were made up as explanations for what was happening
Bad
to them.
stuff is going on.
Yeah, it's like if they were having a lot of floods and rains, then they had a rain god that they were trying to appease,
Yeah.
and that a lot of the gods came about because man was trying to explain something that was happening
Outside of their own.
outside of their own knowledge.
Of course, they still say that about God now.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, ultimately, we know Romans 1. And you're right. You're exactly right. But then, see, in Romans 1, it says that they knew God. I mean, they knew of him. But they didn't want that God. And so they started making the gods, you know, the idols and...
Something they can control.
Yeah, right. You know, whether it be animals or whatever. And so, you know, and God just let them go ahead and do that then. Okay, that's the God you want. But in the back of their mind, everybody knows there is a creator God. But he gave them a depraved mind to go ahead and believe it. Do it anyway. And that's whenever he turns it over to them. That's why this country is that way. You know, the Philistines or the other nations, you know. God did not reveal himself in a way that he did with Israel, but they are responsible for how they respond to this creator God. Now, what they do not do here is reject their heathen idolatry after all this. I mean, they know where this is coming from. You know, it's an impotent God that they have, but yet they don't trust in God, in the God of Israel, and worship him. They simply want this thing now to get out of town. You know, they're not worshiping, they're not repenting, they're not confessing here. And God is just saying, hey, he's more powerful. They know, but they don't want that God. And Kind of reminds you of the Gadarenes. Remember when Jesus went over to that area where the Gadarenes lived, and of course you had the two men that were like crazy. They were running naked in this cemetery and graveyard, and they were just, it was ludicrous. But yet God saved, as in one account, it's like one, and another account shows two. Well, at any rate, when one becomes saved out of demonic kind of a possession that they were in, the whole life changed there. He had clothes on, he was in his right mind, and he wasn't screaming and yelling and going nuts, and the people were amazed by what happened. But what happened? How did they come to Jesus and then say, hey, can we listen to you more, hear your teachings? And what do they say? Get out of here. We don't want you. We don't want this. It was too much for him. He had conquered Satan. That's right. He killed their pigs. Get out of here. Get rid of it. God is too holy, is what it is. He's too holy. He's too hot to handle. So that's why most people want to get rid of him. He's too threatening, isn't he? He's very holy, and as we go a little bit further here, we'll see the very holiness of God in a huge way, not only to the Philistines, but to the Israelites, who should have known better. So we're in chapter 6 now, and we put the ark back in its place. So the ark of the Lord had been in the country of the Philistines 7 months. Wonder how it lasted that long.
God did a lot of damage in that time, didn't he?
A lot of people died. Philistines called for the priest and the diviners, saying, what shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us, how shall we send it to its place? They said, if you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but you shall surely return to him, the true God, a guilt offering. A guilt, it sounds like they're guilty. Well, no, not really. Then you'll be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand is not removed from you. Then they said, what shall be the guilt offering which we shall return to him? And they said, 5 golden tumors. See that at Christmas time. And 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines, the 5 cities. For 1 plague was on all of you and on your lord. So how many cities did it affect? Looks like all 5 of those, which was a big part of the population. Yeah. Cities. So verse 5, you shall make likenesses of your tumors and likenesses of your mice. Make no wooden images. Make no gold images. So they ravage the land. You shall give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will ease his hand from you, your gods, and your land. Why then do you harden your hearts? Look at this. They know how powerful that this God is. They know the story. They know the story really well. The one true God did this. Why did you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? When he had severely dealt with them, did they not allow the people to go, and they departed? Now therefore take and prepare a new cart and 2 milk cows in which there has never been a yoke, and hitch the cows to the cart and take their calves home away from them. Take the ark of the Lord, place it on the cart, put the articles of gold which you return to him as a guilt offering in a box by its side. Then send it away that it may go. Watch if it goes up the way of its own territory to Beth Shemesh, then he, God, has done us this great evil. But if not, then we'll know that it was not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by chance. So it's either or here. We'll explain that in a minute. Then the men did so, took 2 milk cows, hitched them to the cart, shut up their calves at home. They put the ark of the Lord on the cart and the box with the golden mice and the likenesses of their tumors. What idiots. And the cows took the straight way in the direction of Beth Shemesh. They went along the highway, lowing as they went, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines followed them to the border of Beth Shemesh. Okay, how can it be sent back? Well, the ark is a religious problem. And the Philistine priests are asked how the ark can be returned in such a way not to further anger the God of Israel. So they come up with directions. Here's the instructions. Philistine priests come up with it. It's not based upon any understanding of God and his law, even though they did know about the deliverance that this one true God had given his people. The ark cannot be sent away just empty. We got to show something here. Best they could come up with is tumors and mice. So that's what they do. It's a guilt offering. It's interesting that the idea of guilt is raised here, accompanied by this guilt offering. It's based on an assumption that the plagues are the manifestation of God's pride and through his nation and his resulting anger. See, and Debbie was talking about the gods that would get angered, and somehow you have to appease them, and it's how they came up with these kind of gods. So this is the appeasement. So they counsel the Philistine lords to appease him with these rats and golden images of hemorrhoids. I'm telling you. Boy, people have depraved minds. How do people think this way? If you don't know God, you do the best you can. You just do the best you can. That always comes up short. In some way, the Philistines' knowledge about Israel's history, I think, is amazing. They know this God is something. They know God in that sense. They don't know him personally.
But they know how powerful he is.
Yeah.
They know the story of the Egyptians. They know the story of
The
Pharaoh.
whole Exodus, Pharaoh, hardening the heart.
And
It's
even
amazing.
the priests even said back in, what verse is that? 5? No. Where is that? In 5. At the end it says, when they're telling them to make the tumors and images and give glory to the God of Israel.
Yes, you noticed that. Yeah. I don't know how that's the best they could
They
do.
were probably like, we're not going to worship it. We'll do everything else but that.
Some of them might have been that way, but
I'm thinking some of them might have got pretty scared.
I would have
Oh,
hoped
you know it.
that I would have ran to that ark and been you're the God. I don't know what we did.
Yeah.
Help me repent.
You are
Yeah.
the Almighty God. Is all. Yeah. That's if they would have
Give
just
glory to
realized
the
Yeah.
God of Israel.
Yep.
Man, could you imagine? Probably not, but if they had just acknowledged, because they know it's the God of Israel, they know what this God has done, they know its power, and they know that their God hasn't done anything.
Needs to be glued back
Yeah,
together.
their God needs
For
to
some
be-
reason their mind, but God then also shuts that off from them
Yeah.
being able to make that
Yep.
simple understanding.
well, I do find the very last verse of chapter 5 interesting. And the men that died were not, and the men that died not were smitten with the tumors, and the cry of the city went up to heaven.
What's that telling us?
Somebody was crying out.
Yeah.
They know that this God is much bigger than what they've had.
They didn't run over to Dagon to see what he wanted to do.
Yeah. Dagon wasn't going to do Dagon nothing.
Well, you take the plague here that they had. You know what? Egypt had how many plagues? But those 10 curses that came upon them, and it was longer than 7 months, wasn't it? Or, I mean, well, I don't know how long that period was during that time, but I'm just saying that, that's putting up with it for a long time. 7 months. Isn't that about how long it's been since
Well, you gotta.
we've had our own plague here in this nation?
And that 7 months is sending it to Gath and Ekron, and they're sending it out, man.
Hey, they learned.
It took a while to get around.
This is how China learned how to, get something out there. Right? Moving on along. The China plague. Well, they will not err by refusing to let the ark go. That's for sure. Actually, they have this cart, and the cows are the cows who've never been yoked. What's that tell you there?
You have ones that are apparently just probably had their first calves.
And it's to be drawn by these 2 cows, nursing calves. Those cows, what do they want to do? They want to always go back to those calves.
And if they are now never been yoked and are now yoked, they probably aren't walking together too good.
But for some reason, they went. They shouldn't. They should have gone back, right? Which is what they're saying. If they do go back, then it's not from God. You know what they were thinking? It would take a great miracle. It would take a miracle for those cows to do that and not tend to their young calves. And so they're thinking, the numbers are on our side here, and this is really not from God.
Yeah, they're trying to justify what's taking place.
Exactly. They've been saying, well, it's from God and everything, and then they say, well, you know what? There's still a chance that maybe it's not from God.
There was these certain weird circumstances. Maybe it's what we ate or we bathed, or
Maybe it's just our season to be in this.
Yeah.
Maybe Dagon's
It's a fluke
mad at
virus.
us.
It's a fluke virus.
So the cows, if they follow the course of nature, their nature is that they will turn back and go to their calves. Everybody would agree with that, right? If the plagues are from God, well, he wants the ark returned, and we're in trouble. Yeah. The cows will leave their calves behind, drawing the ark, and go directly to Israel. What happened? They went straight. They didn't vary at all, to the left or to the right. They went right to exactly where God had in mind for them to go. And so there we go. They get their answer. Okay, I guess we know now. Now, in verse 13, so the Philistines follow them all the way to Beth Shemesh. Got a border there. Now, the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley. And they raised their eyes and saw the ark, and were glad to see it. I bet so. You got some farmers out in the field, and the next thing you know, here comes these 2 cows and this cart with the ark on it, made of gold, glistening out in the sun. And I guess they were glad to see it, because all of Israel knew that it was gone. They were doomed without it, right?
I think they heard what was going on. Over there, they were having a lot of bad problems, health issues.
Well, I'm sure they probably heard something about it.
I'm sure it got around.
Well, the cart came into the field of Joshua, the Bethshemite, stood there where there was a large stone. They split the wood of the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. There is now. We're getting into sacrificial kind of things now, in a sense that kind of resembles what a true burnt offering is. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the box that was with it.
Yeah, they did a lot of official business.
Now, yours says the Levite, oh, it is.
Yeah.
I thought mine just said.
So where'd the Levites come from?
Yeah, well, this is Yep, they're living around this area, and so here we are. They took down the ark. Um, it had been in Shiloh before, right? The box that was in it, which were the articles of gold, put them on a large stone, and the men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrificed sacrifices that day to the Lord, one true God. When the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, they returned to Ekron that day.
Glued Dagon back together.
He's out of here. He's back safe. We don't hear anything more about the plague in the Philistine area, but we do hear something really bad coming up. I read 17 earlier and 18, I think, about the cities where you have Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, Ekron, and the golden mice and such, and the cities, the country villages. And anyway, there was that rock out there, and it was a witness in the field of Joshua from there on. So, and now you get the Israelites. Everything's going good now, right? Well, God, struck down some of the men of Beth Shemesh. Philistines living there, right? No. These are Israelites. Because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. Let's just open this thing up and let's look in there.
After they did the sacrifice and everything, they did that?
Got some people pretty brazen.
Yeah, they say about curiosity
Kills the Israelite.
Kills the village.
Kills the village. Yeah, apparently, quite a few of them. He struck down all the people, 50,070 men. I'm not so sure if that was that many who had looked into the ark or its counting. We had 4,000 killed earlier, 30,000. Who knows how many you have here? It could be that just all added together during that time period.
He struck 70 men.
What's that?
Mine says he struck 70 men of them.
That's interesting.
70.
We got a problem. No. Actually, don't, because that's sometimes you get numbers in the Old Testament that don't equal out. Mine says 50,070 men. How about some other ones there?
Mine says 50,070.
Really? Putting 70 of them to death because they had looked into the ark.
So who knows how many that happened because they had looked into there. And we don't know. There are different disagreements on these the numbers, and whatever it was a great slaughter. We know about the 30,000, the 4,000, and there could have been a scribal error here that occurred. That was later on. It wasn't originally put in there, but later on, as those guys translating, they put, and that's why sometimes you get some zeros mixed up in there. That's not God's word is in error.
Here's a note that mine has. It says, Archie struck 70 men of the people and 50 oxen of a man.
What's that? And
50 oxen of a man. So like somebody's herd of cattle or something.
Okay.
Of one of the men.
Evidently, there is quite a different agreement. I think what we can look at and come. I wished I could really come and give you an answer on this, but nobody really can. One guy says here, however, a scribal error could have occurred, in which case the number would omit the 50,000 and likely be 70, as in Josephus, as he reported.
Well,
so in your translation, Penny, it could have been those.
In my notes it
70.
says 70 men, 50,000 men. ESV's footnote may possibly mean 70 men, i.e. 5 people out of every 1,000 or every clan. If this is the correct meaning, then the population of the city would have been 14,000 people or 14 clans. So everybody's got an idea of what it means.
Yeah. It is confusing,
Yeah.
especially when you get into the Hebrew and then
Well,
translating
what we
and
really
such.
know here is God is holy.
And that is the point.
And
Right
we're
there.
not.
Right
And
there.
we're
Yeah.
God is holy. That's what we want to get from this. And you remember, this happens later on whenever David wants to put the ark on a cart. I wonder if he got that. I heard about this story, later on it's passed
Oh, that
down.
was a good idea. That's how you transport it.
No, they were not, the ark was never to be put on a cart. It was to be put on with poles, and men would carry it. That's the way that he prescribed. It's written in his word. David had some great idea about putting it in a cart. And what happened? Well, the cart was getting ready to fall over, and a man catches it, and you go, yay!
Yeah.
No, that's, no man is to touch that. And he'd say, what kind of God is that? Why would he do that? That's ridiculous. Little things like that shouldn't matter. Oh, his word is holy. There's reasons why. And he's saying, you cannot touch the presence of God. And when he says it, it'd been better to let it fall. If that's what it was going to do. Or God could have kept it from falling.
God can take care of himself.
That's right.
That's his whole problem. He don't need us.
Yeah.
Slap.
But somehow man always has to help out. But
God's weak and
he
so
said,
down.
don't touch it. They did it. And it's like a great slaughter happened. Whatever the numbers are here, we've 4,000, 30,000, you've got maybe 70 here. Whatever it is, after it's all said and done, it could be over 50,000 people have died because of Philistines, and this time, I don't know. But we can say this, that there was a great slaughter that day, or during that time. The men of Beth Shemesh said, and here you go, who is able to stand before the Lord, this holy God? Who's able to stand? Nobody. That's the word for us. Who are we to stand before a holy God? None of us. Who are we? But we stand because of Christ, the deliverer. And he, and being the mediator that he is, being the priest that he is, he takes us into the Holy of Holies. And so that is a wonder for us, isn't it? And we recognize his holiness. Anytime we peer into the Word of God, it's amazing. And so he stripped back the veil that was in the temple for all to be able to see into that Holy of Holies. And he's saying, really, it's been open now. You now have direct access to me like you've never had before. So, to whom shall it go up from us? So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim, saying, the Philistines have brought back the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you. Who's able to stand before a holy God? It seems almost like a catch-22 situation, doesn't it? The Israelites find themselves in a situation quite similar to the one facing the Philistines, except that the ark belongs in Israel, not amongst the Philistines. That's the difference. So Kiriath Jearim, it's the resting place until it's going to be moved again. The Israelites of Beth Shemesh sent to send the ark to some other place. So that the hand of God, that would be a heavy hand, is turned away from them. And there were slaughters there, and so it's a nearby city. It's chosen. Men for that city, they come down, get the ark. They're going to put it into the house of Abinadab under the care of Eleazar, his son, and he's consecrated for one task, to take care of that. The Ark of God is going to remain there for about 20 years. And then David is going to retrieve that. So for the next 20 years, there's not going to be any rabbit's foot for the Israelites. They are to trust totally in God. No kind of idols. And just in case they want one like the Philistines have, no, you're not going to turn that ark into that. And you know what? It's kind of interesting. The ark disappeared. Nobody knew really where it went. I've heard some stories where it could be. Very possible. Could be under where the rock is at today, where the temple used to be. It could be someplace in Ethiopia. A lot of good reasons why. We don't know. But I think there's a reason why that Israel doesn't have that today. Because they'd turn it into a god.
They'd start rebuilding Solomon's temple
They
for
would
sure.
start worshiping that.
Yeah.
Start making sacrifices.
Well,
And if they happen to find that,
They're gonna.
They're gonna
And
do that, aren't
build
they?
their temple.
Yeah,
And they're
build
gonna
the
institute
temple, they're gonna
sacrifice.
Start doing sacrifices.
Yep.
so for the next
And when
20
that
years,
happens,
The Antichrist is gonna come in,
I
subdue
hope we're gone.
the throne, claim himself to be God.
getting close to that.
Yeah. We still need that false prophet though.
So do you think it will be found?
Oh, it's,
Could very possibly
It has
be.
to found.
At the right time.
yeah, scriptures.
Because it actually was in the temple.
Has to be
So
complete. Then.
That was at the time of Babylon, and then after that, we don't know.
where it went.
You know, the priest might have hidden it. Might have. Some say it went down to Ethiopia whenever the queen, or and she had been there before. You know, that's Solomon, of course, around not what 900 BC, and of course this is 500 BC or somewhere where that's finally missing. But there was the Judaism and the truth about the one true God went to Ethiopia, and because of that, you know, they're very possible. You know, I mean, it's possible. Who knows? But here's the deal: they have to trust in God, and they have to trust in Him, and they're going to be assisted by Samuel. Samuel is going to have to come in now and get them prepared and ready for a king to come. They want a king, and that's what we'll be looking at very, very quickly now. But Samuel is going to assist them as being their prophet, being their judge, kind of being a go-between. And this godly man will get people's hearts ready. By the time they get David, they will be ready. And of course, that was kind of a golden time period, even though it was a very warring time. And David conquers most of the Philistines. Israel couldn't do that until the king came in and did that. So that's what this is getting set up for. You can see how they did things right in their own eyes when it even seemed right. Let's look into the ark.
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like that would have been my oops. I would have been
You
like,
were one of those curious cats.
I'm like, hey, no, just take a peek. I'm next.
Here, just take this stick here and just stand back and just open it up a little bit.
Like rock, paper, scissors.
It's quite straight on the hood. And I said, did they do something bad?
Okay, now I got a question. Was the ark in the temple at the time that Jesus was here on earth?
No,
It was already gone before.
no, you're probably talking over 500 years that it's been missing. So they operated the temple without an ark.
David was the last.
But that's really, you know, that was what was to go back into the Holy of Holies. And that mercy
Once
seat.
they got captured into the Babylonian and they got split.
Yeah.
That was the last time, right?
Yeah. And some say the priest might have, you know, put it in the secret chambers underneath where the rock is right there in Jerusalem where the temple was. And so they hid it because they knew the enemy was coming.
Right.
And of course they destroyed Jerusalem, and the temple and everything, but they had it underground. And some people say it's there. We can't quite get to it. We don't know.
They're always
God's
doing
good at that.
archaeological findings. I mean, they're always finding more and more stuff.
Yeah, and you'd think if Babylon, if they had taken it with them, they would have ended up like
That's
these
the
guys.
problem.
Well, that's
With
true.
tumors
I
and
wonder why
mice.
they didn't open it up. If they would've. Yeah, I think it's funny, which not really funny, but it's kind of funny, is that